Okay, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuffs. A really cool review for you guys from the brand Hitori Watch Company. They're an in-house Nomen brand influenced by Japanese culture. In terms of the type of watch, this is a traveler's watch. Some key characteristics and design language. You're looking for something that you could wear within this space. Of course, you're going to want to find that either GMT or world timer functionality so that you're able to track multiple time zones with relative ease. This is their, I'll try to get this right, Meguro GMT Aki Koyo in terms of the colorway, which is representative of the autumn red leaves. And this is a tribute to the autumn season in Japan with its unique reddish brown tones. It takes most of its design cues from models like the $6,400 Grand Seiko SBGE 277 Spring Drive GMT, but with a few changes like the relocation of the date window and crown to the more traditional 3 o'clock positions. These are actually going to be releasing on the 28th of November, depending on when you're watching this, and they are limited to 100 pieces each in terms of the different colorways. This unit was of course provided kindly to the channel free of charge by Nomen Watches ahead of time so that I could hopefully be able to get you guys some footage and coverage of this piece if you are interested, and then that way you have a head start, and these hopefully won't be sold out by the time you go to add to cart. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, let's dive in. Now, one thing I really actually like about this watch is going to be its approach to the colorway. Now, reddish brown is the way this is sold, but I will say, in between lighting conditions, this can actually come off as quite a pink dial. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that because typically when Grand Seiko do pink dials, they do more of a blush pink. So it's more so like white with the very, very subtle tones. Like this is definitely a deeper pink colorway, but I would say it's not a traditional pink. So it's not like a hot pink or anything like that that's going to stand out. But I will say it's going to give you a lot of those tones that you would typically associate with it, depending on the lighting conditions. Again, now, one of the great things about Hitori is their real attention to detail. Now, this isn't going to be some hand finish piece like, like an actual Grand Seiko, but they do take on a lot of complex feature sets that typically brands in these more entry-level price points shy away from. Like you get the hand stack there, look at the level of fit and finish on the handset, multiple finishes, beveled edges there, guys. You're going to get, even on those applied indices, some dimensionality there. I mean, again, not to the level of a Grand Seiko, but it's going to give you so much for not much at all. I mean, the watch I compared this to, again, $6,400, so $6,400. So compared to something like this, unfortunately, I don't have the release pricing yet, but considering the movement that it has and the brand itself, I would assume this is going to be under $1,000 by a good amount. This does have the very desirable Miyota 9075 Flyer GMT, which means you're going to have that nice jumping hour handset. So if you are traveling, it's very, very intuitive, where essentially you're going to be able to jump around. Boom, which is great depending on, hey, if I'm in California and I go to Texas, or maybe I go to New York and I just jump it, then I come back home, bam. So that is a very nice feature set. The one trade-off is you're going to be losing your quick date adjustment. Essentially, you have to cycle through with your hour hand to set that. So when you're setting the watch, you're essentially setting the minutes and the 24-hour time there, and then you can jump around the local hour. Now, this is a good looking piece in terms of its dimensions. Here's another thing where it differs from Grand Seiko. This is a very, very nice size. I know Grand Seiko's, because of the movements that are inside, at least for the, more affordable ones that are still quite expensive, they're going to be a little bit bigger and a little bit thicker, right? And they have to have a little bit more size, because if they made them smaller in diameter with the thicker movements, then they would just look overly thick. So the wider diameter typically can help stretch those features meters out. Of course, there are newer, more high-end movements that are going to be at the top of the range there where they can achieve an easier level of thinness. But, you know, relatively speaking, finding something like this at 40 millimeters in diameter is going to be pretty tough to find with a turning bezel, right? So that's going to help it wear even smaller because now you have that dial to bezel ratio. You even do have a sloped chapter ring that's going to help push everything to the center of the dial and really make this wear more compact than maybe the numbers would allude to. This has actually a 13 millimeter thickness, and yeah, that's 13 millimeters thick isn't ultra thin, but I mean, it doesn't look overly thick. Thanks in part to the tricks that they have here. Look at this nice sweeping undercut there. It's just very nice. Then you have, of course, the over faceted portion on that bevel. Let me give it a quick little wipe there so you guys can get an unobscured look at just how, you know, how much effort's been put into this case finish. Look at that. That is pretty nice. Now, no, it's not Grand Seiko level, and you know, it's probably just a hair underneath a Seiko Presage in terms of the level of the fineness that's in the brushing, but there's just a certain level of complexity they've taken on by having the bevels, by following those bevels into the outer links there. You're just not typically going to find, let me give it another quick wipe here, guys, because those bevels are another levels up, so rhyme intended. But you can see there that outer bevel is very nice as well. So there's all these little niceties that come together to really make this feel a lot more expensive than it really is. And again, guys, I wish I knew the final pricing on here, but check the links down in the description. As long as it's after the 28th, you should be good to go. Let me know what the current pricing is. But this is probably their most ambitious watch yet in terms of the movement choice, you know, and then the full line of specs. You're getting a turning bezel as well. Now, speaking of the turning bezel, one thing I do want to mention is you get 120 clicks, but it's bi-directional. Very nice, guys. So let's try to listen up. So very nice, and that's going to really make things easier. Another thing that's going to make things a lot easier in terms of tracking multiple time zones is going to be that slope chapter ring, which has the opposite offset of here. You can see it's going, you know, 2, 4, 6. There it's going 1, 3, 5. So very cool, and that's actually a huge point for functionality when you're trying to track multiple time zones, because without that, then you wouldn't have the secondary reference. So the nice thing is you could potentially turn the bezel, right, to set a different time zone, but then still track the original time zone off of that 24-hour insert on the chapter ring. So very, very cool. Also, of course, double dome sapphire with an inner AR coating, just like you would expect. Also, you're getting a signed screw down crown. I will say there aren't a ton of threads when you're turning this to screw it in and out, the crown. That is, but again, it's not a dive watch. You know, it only has 15 bar or 150 meters, which is more than enough to go on a modern dive, guys. I mean, typically dives are going to be closer to about 40 meters for recreational diving. But, you know, this wasn't made to be a diver, so, you know, I can forgive the fact that it doesn't have a bunch of turns there on the screw down crown. Now, the movement inside, a really cool thing is you can actually see it, and they've done some things that are, again, another callback to Grand Seiko. So one of the things they've done is they put a tint on there, and check that out. It has just a bit of kind of an iridescent kind of rainbow-like effect to it, which is going to add just a little bit of visual interest and flavor to this piece. Let me just hold that there. Actually, you know what? With quick release spring bars, the nice thing is I should be able to just pinch this. All right. Pull it out. Okay, maybe I should be able to do that easily, but it'll, okay, oh, there we go. The nice thing is now what I can do, give it a quick little wipe. I can give you guys a more unobstructed view. Check that out. So a really cool thing here is look at that custom rotor. Very nice. And again, if you look at the reflection of the studio light, you can see there's a bit of a colorway that's there that, again, it's still iridescent and you know, you can see through it. but the nice thing is it just gives you a little playful tint. And again, that color matches the overall theme, right, of the red autumn leaves. So that kind of colorway, the warm tones, I think that's cool. Of course, you're getting some gold tones as well on that very nicely raised logo there. Is it applies? Is it just raised? And then, I can't tell. And I don't know if they advertise it as applied, but I will say it looks very good, very crisp. And there's a nice bit of separation between it and the regular backdrop. I will say one thing that would have been nice, and this is something that my feedback typically for any type of watch that's doing this, one of the things that Grand Seiko do that's really good that goes a little overlooked is the fact that they will actually put a clear lacquer on their dial, which just adds so much depth. There's no lacquer here, so you're actually seeing the more raw texturing, which I think looks fantastic. But it would probably add a bit extra level of depth, but also, unfortunately, a bit of an extra level of cost if they were to put a clear lacquer on there. But that's one thing that, it's close. It does a great rendition, but yeah, it's not pitch perfect in terms of what it's trying to recreate, guys. But yeah, this is a handsome piece. So with that said, let's look at the movement. Of course, do we hear it? It has a display case back, right? So typically these 9000 series movements, some people get a little upset about the rotor whir sounds. I don't mind it. It obviously doesn't sound ultra premium, but it also doesn't make me think of something that's cheap. It just lets me know that it's alive and well on my wrist. And of course, if this was a solid case back, you'd probably get a little bit of a better dampened, case, and the sound would probably be less apparent. But then you wouldn't have this really cool little, show to enjoy. So with all that said, let's actually get this piece all put back together and on the wrist. Okay. As you guys can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this wears well. And yes, it's more of a full-sized piece, don't get me wrong. It's far from vintage inspired in terms of the way that it wears. But again, comparing it to its inspiration, this is actually a much more manageable size on the wrist than you typically find for this particular aesthetic. And I think it looks good. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens here, you're going to get a fair amount of perspective distortion, and it's just going to make the watch case feel much larger than it actually is. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low, and then just tighten up the frame like so that you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And check that out. Look at the organic lines on here. And again, guys, this is not a one-to-one copy of Grand Seiko. So that's one of the things I also appreciate from Hitori is that, they add a little bit of their own flavor. Here, they're doing things that some people would say are improvements, right? On a very nice, well-received, very expensive watch. By moving the crown to the 3 o'clock position, by moving the date to the 3 o'clock position, it's definitely much more of a traditional layout, and it helps again just add a little bit of separation between this and the watch that inspired it so much. Even when you get down to the colorways, I mean, I haven't seen anything like this from Grand Seiko, and I think this is just a really cool tone. Again, typically they're going to go with these more pale blush type of pinks. Here, this is like a deep, again, it's that brownish red, but I think during different lighting situations, you're going to get a nice kind of warm pink tone that's very, vibrant and deep versus it being really bright and airy. And I like that. And it just looks good. I mean, all the other color blocking that they've done with, it's, splitting the bezel insert in half, as well as the secondary 24-hour scale that's going to be on that sloped chapter ring. I think it all looks really, really good. Ooh, I'm digging it. And did I forget to mention some details about the dial? Hey, we got applied indices. They're brushed and faceted. You got the sloped two-tone chapter ring, textured dial, of course, with that framed date at 3 o'clock, just to kind of recap everything. And you're getting brushed and faceted hands with that golden GMT hand and polished seconds hand with the very nice hand stack cap there. So look at that little cap. That's nice. It's clean. It's just a beautifully, applied little detail there, and I like that. There's a lot of little details that you can appreciate. 20 millimeter lug width, drilled lugs, guys. You're gonna get, of course, that 5-link Grand Seiko style bracelet with a screw pin construction, which is great. And then this does taper down to about 16 millimeters, going into this milled and signed fold over push button V clasp with a 4-position micro adjust space there, manual micro adjustment. So you're just going to have the little holes in terms of the settings there, but I'm digging this. But with all that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Hey, look at that. Very, very legible, quite bright. Now, some of you might be a little disappointed with the level of lume on the dial. I will say, even on my own personal Grand Seiko GMT watch, that was actually one of my first big luxury purchases for the channel. It has a similar layout where it's not about the volume of lume. It's just, going to get you those cardinal references so that you do have the lume available for you. And yeah, again, this isn't a dedicated dive watch. This is more of a traveler's piece, and it, being able to have a whole ton of lume, while it's fun and it's great, it's one of those things. I personally don't feel that that's a huge deal breaker for me, because it just, in terms of the style of the watch, this makes more sense in my eyes for it to be a little bit more refined, a little bit dressier. This isn't something where they're really trying to make a big statement about it being, some adventure tool, ready to scale a mountain with, or go spelunking in a cave with. Like, this is, it's a nice little traveler's GMT. I wouldn't even say it's really trying to say it's a big, pilot's type of watch, because, legibility wise, there's going to be other options that are going to be a little bit more sterile and more legible at a glance. Here, they're really focusing on this kind of additional level of artistry, and just the level, ooh, this dial, those hands, I mean, I tell you what, guys, I own Grand Seiko, 2 of them, and I love them. This, for not a lot of money, and again, I don't know, I highly doubt this is going to cost more than $1,000. So even if this was $999, I'd still be impressed. I would still absolutely be impressed, just of the level of ambition and complexity here, and even what they were able to pull off, not just what their intentions were, but the product that's in front of me. And no, I'm not saying that it's like, it's the most finest finish. None of that, right? Like, it's well done. It's very complex in terms of its approach. And, for the most part, they pull off a lot of it. I say they get probably about, a good 65-70% of the way there in terms of, what this watch design wise, kind of requires, right, to really sell the luxury nature here. And again, this isn't some hand built piece, created by, a small group of artisans. This is just, a watch that is well produced, well manufactured, nice QC. And, I would say it's probably, more comparable finishes wise to something within the Presage line, not the super high end stuff, but more so maybe the stuff with the 4R movements with the gold rotor, and, where you normally get, just different types of feature sets depending on the model. But here you're getting this thing fully loaded. You're getting a nice bracelet, you're getting a turning bezel, you're getting a lot of lume on that bezel, and I think it just looks really, really good, and it's quite compelling at the end of the day. And they even do have another colorway, which also looks quite good. So with that said, let's actually get all the lights back here, get into some closing thoughts. All right, guys, on the wrist, really nice Goldilocks proportions with Presage-like attention to detail. Again, there's a lot of complex lines and finishes and all, you know, there's just a lot to this. This definitely was not just an easy kind of, all right, we'll take a case that's already being produced and our bracelet that's already and all these things, and we'll just drop a new colorway and you know, we'll try to make it look like a Grand Seiko then. No, like there was new machining, new tooling, a lot of that goes into this, and to the point to where, yeah, I'm impressed with what they were able to kind of make happen for this brand. And again, I know that this brand isn't going to be charging an arm and a leg for something like this. They're always about trying to offer you a nice, you know, assimilation of something, but just at a much more approachable price point. So, model variants, this is again also available, but it's in a Fuyu white colorway with blue accents representing the winter season. So here we have autumn, and the other option would be winter. Would it be cool if we see a little spring and summer maybe for the next release? I think that would be awesome. I think this line just justifies the work that they put into it, and I would definitely love to see more seasons being brought in the future. Now, in terms of comparable models, guys, the closest mainstream comparable would be something like the SPB225 Sharp Edge GMT from Seiko's Presage line. You'll also get a 4Hz Flyer GMT, which a lot of people don't even realize that you can get a Flyer GMT with a 4Hz sweep from normal Seiko, and you don't actually have to get a Grand Seiko. But, you know, you're going to pair that with Grand Seiko aesthetics on a Seiko watch, right? Within the Seiko Sharp Edge, you know, Presage line. So you're going to get those aesthetics, but you're also going to be paying for them, right? And you'll be getting a larger watch, right? That's going to be like closer to like 42 millimeters with less optimal proportions. And those are cool. I've been torn. There's been a couple of cool deals I found on those as well. And it's just, I'm tempted, but they have just this weird kind of unsightly date subdial. So instead of the date being in a disc, it's a subdial where the pointer is going to go, you know, from 1 to 31. So not crazy about that, but I will say they do have a cool power reserve indicator. So it does, you know, help balance everything out in terms of those dial layouts. But for me, it's just not optimal. Or something like this is, you know, ultimately, you know, easier, but also generally less offensive. So they went out of their way to make something that's going to have a decent amount of crossover appeal. Now, in terms of comparable models, yeah, well, actually, we kind of already went there, right? Is a Presage Sharp Edge GMT, and you could try to compare other stuff that's cheaper. But, you know, there you're going to be getting the office or color style GMT. Here, yeah, like, so it's, this thing punches really above its weight from that perspective. But I will say, of course, there's a ton of biker brands out there that are using this movement, and depending on what your preferences are, what your design aesthetics that really resonate with you are, then you may or may not want to, you know, consider this one. Now, in terms of just a flat out bottom line here, guys, although this is a clear homage, right, it does impressively step up to the task of trying to emulate a luxurious hand-worked timepiece. And if you can get a hold of one in the metal, I think it will surely impress, especially with its highly desirable Miyota 9075 Flyer GMT movement, featuring an intuitive jumping hour local hand. So guys, with that said, let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you're already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.